The sound of the battle raged outside. The Sentinel, humanity's last remaining warship, was caught in the throes of a cataclysmic conflict. Its hull groaned under the weight of countless Talsiri energy blasts. Captain Adrian Steele, once a man of peace, now found himself facing a war that would determine the fate of his people. His heart, however, was not hardened by the fight. Instead, it burned with the idea of a single hope: peace. The Talsiri, an ancient alien race, known for their unmatched power and intelligence, had descended upon humanity with terrifying speed. Their queen, the brilliant and ruthless Alina, led them, and the battle had become a deadly stalemate. The once thriving Earth colonies were reduced to ashes, their people scattered across the stars. Adrian stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, watching as his crew prepared for what could be their final stand. His face, weary from the weeks of fighting, was a mask of resolve. The ship's sensors beeped frantically, alerting them of yet another incoming wave from the Talsiri flagship. He could feel the weight of every life on board, the weight of his people bearing down on him. "Captain, the Talsiri are advancing," Lieutenant Mara Schultz reported from her station. "We can't hold them off much longer. We need reinforcements, but we're alone out here." Adrian glanced at the tactical display. The enemy fleet loomed like a storm ready to devour them. His mind raced, and yet amid the chaos, one thought stood out with sharp clarity: a single chance, a final effort to stop the slaughter. "I'm not waiting for reinforcements," Adrian said quietly, his voice steady. "I'll make contact." "Prepare the shuttle." Mara's eyes widened in disbelief. "Sir, you can't—" "I know," Adrian interrupted. "But we've lost enough. I'm going to speak to her." He couldn't help but notice the doubt in Mara's eyes. She knew what he was about to do. Alina, the Talsiri Queen, was no ordinary leader. She was an enigma, a being whose intellect and power surpassed anything humanity had ever encountered. Adrian had met her once before, in the midst of the war's early stages. Despite her cold demeanor, there had been something in her eyes, something that made Adrian believe that deep down, she wasn't entirely the enemy. Adrian made his way to the shuttle bay. The crew was busy preparing for their last offensive, but he was preparing for something else. A moment of truth. If he succeeded, if his plan worked, it could bring an end to the war. If he failed, humanity would be erased from existence. As the shuttle launched from the Sentinel, the silence was deafening. Adrian sat alone, the weight of what he was about to do pressing on his chest like a heavy stone. He had no plan beyond speaking to her, the queen who had brought his people to the edge of extinction. The shuttle hurtled through the void, and the Talsiri flagship grew larger with each passing second. "Captain, I have to warn you." Mara's voice crackled through the comms. "The Talsiri are ruthless. Alina may see this as an act of war, not a plea for peace." "I know," Adrian replied, "but we've lost enough. I'm doing this for humanity." The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss as Adrian stepped onto the Talsiri flagship. The metallic floors hummed under his boots, and the air felt thick with an energy he couldn't quite understand. It was as though the ship itself was alive. Talsiri soldiers flanked the hallways, their glowing eyes tracking his every move. They were an impressive sight, tall, imposing, and silent, but Adrian felt no fear. He was led through the labyrinthine corridors until he reached a massive chamber. At the far end, on a raised platform, stood Queen Alina. Her presence was overwhelming, a mix of beauty and danger. Her skin shimmered with a delicate blue glow, her eyes twin pools of burning amber. She was regal, untouchable, and every bit the ruler of a vast empire. Adrian stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. The moment had arrived. "Human," Alina's voice rang out, cool and authoritative, her tone like velvet. "You come before me not as a conqueror but as a beggar. What is it you seek?" Adrian felt the weight of her gaze, 1,000 questions in her eyes, but he didn't falter. "I seek peace," he said, his voice unwavering. "I seek to end the suffering for both our people." Alina's eyes flickered with something, curiosity? Surprise? For a moment, Adrian thought he saw a flicker of something else, something human in her gaze, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "A beggar for peace," she mused. "But what could your people offer in exchange? Your world is broken, your people fractured." "We offer hope," Adrian said, his heart full of that singular, unyielding belief. "We offer the will to rebuild." The Queen's gaze softened, just slightly, and for the first time Adrian felt the weight of his words in her eyes. Perhaps there was hope after all. The silence stretched between them thick and heavy as the tension in the room built with every passing second. Adrian stood unwavering before Queen Alina, feeling the weight of her gaze. Her amber eyes were pools of calculation, as though she were weighing every word he spoke, every movement he made. And yet there was something in her eyes, a flicker of doubt, perhaps even curiosity. "I've heard the whispers of your people," Alina said softly, her voice rich with a quiet power that filled the room. "Humanity, fragile, desperate, but resilient. Your kind never gives up, do they?" Adrian didn't hesitate. "No. We fight for what we believe in, even when it seems hopeless, even when everything is lost." Alina's gaze seemed to harden for a moment, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. "But your people have already lost," she said, her voice tinged with something Adrian couldn't quite place. "What is left to fight for? You are outmatched. Your colonies are in ruins. Your forces are scattered." "I'm not here to fight for what's left," Adrian replied, his voice steady but with an undercurrent of emotion. "I'm here because I believe that what's left is enough to rebuild if we're given the chance. Peace can heal what war has broken, but only if you're willing to try." The Queen's lips curled into a faint smile, an expression that seemed both enigmatic and dangerous. She tilted her head as though intrigued by his persistence. "You truly believe that, don't you? You think peace can heal the wounds of our people? The destruction I have caused?" Adrian nodded. "I do. Because I've seen what peace can do. I've seen what humanity is capable of when they come together. I don't want to see more blood spilled. Not between us." Alina stepped down from her throne, her movements graceful and deliberate. She walked around him, her presence imposing as she circled him like a lioness sizing up its prey. Adrian kept his gaze straight ahead, but he could feel her eyes on him, studying him in a way that made him feel both small and yet strangely important. "I have seen the fire in your eyes," Alina said, her voice almost a whisper. "I have seen it in others too. But the fire of your people is not what will save you. It is your heart that will decide your fate, Captain. And the hearts of your people." Adrian clenched his fists at his sides, the weight of her words sinking in. He knew that she had the power to destroy everything. She could end humanity with a single word, a single command. Yet here she was, standing before him, offering something far more dangerous than destruction: hope. "Then give me a chance to prove it to you," Adrian said, his voice firm. "Let me show you that peace isn't just a dream. It's a reality we can create together." Alina stopped in front of him, her towering figure casting a shadow over him. Her gaze was intense, searching, and for a moment the space between them felt electric. Adrian could feel the weight of the decision hanging in the air, and for the first time, he felt as though his plea had truly reached her. "You are bold." "Captain Steele," Alina said, her voice low, almost a growl. "You are not like the others who have come to beg for mercy. Your words, your conviction, they are different. But do you truly understand the cost of peace?" Adrian swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. "I do," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I understand the cost, but it is a price worth paying." Alina's eyes softened just for a moment before she turned away. She walked back to her throne, her steps purposeful. "I have brought destruction to your people," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I have watched as worlds crumbled under my command. And now you ask me to stop, to rebuild what I have broken." For a moment there was nothing but the quiet hum of the ship, the stillness of the room wrapping around them like a heavy cloak. Adrian waited, his breath held, knowing that this was the moment where everything could change. If she rejected him now, it would be over. But if she accepted, "I will give you a chance," Alina said, her voice suddenly sharp and commanding. "But it will not be easy. You will have to prove that your people are truly worthy of peace. I will not make this decision lightly." Adrian felt a rush of emotion flood through him, his heart racing. "I'll do whatever it takes." Alina's smile returned, this time more genuine than before, though it still carried an air of mystery. "Then prove it, Captain Steele. Prove to me that humanity can still be trusted." Alina's gaze lingered on him as he turned to leave, her presence still as commanding as the first moment they'd met. But as he walked out of the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that something inside her had shifted. There was a flicker of doubt in her eyes, something not entirely alien. A crack in the armor of the Ruthless Queen who had commanded her people to war for so long. The halls of the Talsiri flagship were silent as Adrian made his way back to the shuttle. The weight of the Queen's words hung heavy in the air, like the aftermath of a storm. He had been granted a chance. Now he had to prove that peace was worth the gamble. Back aboard the Sentinel, the crew was waiting, their eyes full of expectation as he entered the bridge. "Well?" Mara asked, unable to hide the concern in her voice. "What did she say?" Adrian paused, his mind racing as he tried to put into words what had just transpired. "She agreed to give us a chance," he said quietly, his voice filled with disbelief. "But she wants us to prove we're worthy of it. She wants to see if we truly believe in peace. We have to show her that we're more than just survivors." Mara's eyes narrowed in thought. "How do we do that, Captain? She's an alien queen. She's destroyed entire civilizations. How can we possibly prove we're capable of peace when all we've done is fight?" Adrian shook his head, his thoughts swirling like a storm. "I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. She's testing us. She wants to see if we can trust her, if we can trust ourselves." As the crew continued to prepare for the next phase of the mission, Adrian couldn't help but feel a sinking feeling in his chest. How could he convince a queen, a conqueror, that humanity was capable of something as fragile as peace? What did he even have to offer? But then it hit him. He had one thing that the Talsiri had lost, a sense of humanity, of compassion, of connection. Perhaps that was what he needed to show her. Maybe it wasn't about convincing her of their worth in a traditional sense. Maybe it was about showing her that the very thing she had discarded, humanity's heart, was the one thing worth fighting for. Days passed, and Adrian's thoughts were consumed by his mission. Every conversation, every strategy seemed to lead him back to one thing: trust. Could he trust the Queen, and could humanity trust him to make peace? The two ideas were tangled in his mind, and yet something kept urging him forward. The Queen's smile before he left, faint and guarded, lingered in his memory. It was the first time he had seen anything but cold calculation in her expression. There had been a glimmer of hope in her gaze. Perhaps she was starting to understand the humanity he was speaking of. But just as his mind began to settle, a message arrived from Alina. The communication was brief but clear. "Come, I will give you one more test." Adrian's heart skipped a beat. The Queen wasn't done with him yet. He knew this was his final chance. His breath caught in his throat as he prepared to meet her again, uncertain of what this test would entail. Was she still testing his people's resolve? Or had she already decided that peace was an illusion? The shuttle ride to the Talsiri flagship felt longer than ever before. Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that this would be the defining moment, not just for him but for humanity. He arrived on the flagship once again, this time with a heavy weight in his chest. The air felt thicker, more charged as he was led back to Alina's throne room. Her presence was as formidable as before, but there was something different this time. She was waiting for him, her eyes filled with something new, curiosity perhaps, or something even deeper. "Captain Steele," she said, her voice soft, almost inviting. "I've been thinking. You've asked for peace, but I must ask you, are you willing to pay the price? Are you truly ready to sacrifice what it takes to achieve it?" Adrian stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "I'll do whatever it takes. Humanity is ready to change. But will you give us that chance?" Alina's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. For a moment there was nothing but silence between them, and then, just as Adrian feared he might be rejected, she spoke again. "The cost of peace is not always what you think it is, Captain Steele, but I will give you one final chance to prove yourself. You and your people will have to demonstrate your willingness to trust, not just me, but each other." Adrian nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "We will prove it. I will prove it." Adrian's heart pounded as Alina's words lingered in the air, heavy with their meaning. The cost of peace was not something he could easily understand, not in the way the Talsiri might. But in that moment, he knew the battle ahead would not be fought with weapons or strategies. It would be fought with something far more difficult to win: trust. Alina's piercing gaze never wavered as she regarded him. There was no warmth in her expression, no sign of comfort or reassurance, just a cold, calculating intensity that made every word she spoke feel like a judgment. "The test will not be simple, Captain Steele," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "You will be tested not only in your strength but in your heart. Humanity's greatest weakness has always been its lack of unity. If you truly seek peace, you must show that your people can overcome their differences and trust one another. Only then will you prove yourselves worthy of peace. Adrian's stomach tightened. He had known that this moment would come, but the weight of her words, her expectations, hit him like a storm. Could humanity rise to such a challenge? Could they truly set aside their differences for a fragile hope? Alina stepped down from her throne, her eyes never leaving him. "You will return to your ship now," she said, her tone commanding. "I will allow you 1 month to prepare. At the end of that time, we will see whether humanity has the strength to trust and to act in unity. If you fail, I will order the destruction of your fleet." The finality of her words struck Adrian like a blow. If they failed, there would be no second chance. Humanity would be destroyed, wiped from the galaxy in a moment of the Queen's choosing. He swallowed hard, but there was no time to hesitate. This was it. This was the test that would determine the fate of his people. As he left the throne room, he felt a surge of determination flood his chest. He didn't know how they would succeed, but he knew that he couldn't let fear dictate his actions. The challenge ahead was daunting, but it was not impossible. They would find a way. And back aboard the Sentinel, the crew gathered in the main briefing room awaiting Adrian's return. His expression was unreadable as he entered, but the weight of his silence spoke volumes. The crew fell quiet as he stepped to the front, his eyes scanning their faces. "We've been given a chance," he said, his voice steady despite the pressure he felt. "But it comes with a cost. The Talsiri want to see if humanity can trust itself. They want to know if we can overcome our divisions and act as one. If we can do that, they will give us peace. If not, we're done." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. There were those who still believed that peace was impossible, that the war was inevitable. But there were others, Adrian could see it in their eyes, who still believed in the hope of a better future. "This is a test of everything we stand for," Adrian continued. "I know we've been through hell and back, but now we have to prove that we can do what we've always said we could. We have to trust each other completely. We have to set aside every difference, every conflict that has held us back. Only then will we be worthy of peace." Mara stepped forward, her eyes sharp with focus. "And how do you propose we do that, Captain?" "Our people are divided. Some still want revenge, some still believe in fighting to the bitter end. Can we really expect them to come together for peace?" Adrian nodded. He knew the challenge ahead was more than just tactical. It was emotional, psychological, even spiritual. He wasn't asking for unity in a simple, surface-level way. He was asking for a deep, profound trust that humanity had never been asked to offer before. "We start with us," Adrian said, his gaze sweeping across the room. "We start with this crew, this family. We have to show that we can be united, even if the world around us is falling apart. If we can trust one another, if we can act as one, maybe, just maybe, we can inspire the rest of humanity to do the same." The crew fell into a hushed silence. The weight of Adrian's words settled on their shoulders like a cloak. The challenge seemed insurmountable, but the resolve in the room was unmistakable. They had fought together through so much. Could they come together now for something greater? Mara's eyes softened. "We'll do it," she said quietly but firmly. "We'll do whatever it takes." And with that, Adrian knew that the first step had been taken. The crew had decided. They would trust each other. They would try, but there was still a long road ahead. In the month that followed was a whirlwind of challenges. Adrian knew that the task ahead wasn't just about uniting his crew. It was about setting an example for the rest of humanity. The war had fractured them in ways that were difficult to comprehend. Political divisions, cultural rifts, old grudges, each one a barrier that had to be broken down. The crew of the Sentinel spent long hours in training, communication exercises, and team-building tasks. They shared their personal stories, their fears, and their hopes. Slowly, the walls began to fall. Trust was not something that could be rebuilt in a day, but Adrian saw it happening. His crew was learning to rely on each other in ways they hadn't before. As the days passed, the crew of the Sentinel grew stronger. They had faced their divisions head-on, each moment of vulnerability drawing them closer. Yet despite the progress, Adrian knew that the greatest challenge still lay ahead. The Talsiri Queen would soon return, and the real test of humanity's resolve was about to begin. The Talsiri were not a race known for their mercy, nor for their understanding of weakness. Alina's people had risen to power through strength, through the ability to dominate, to subjugate. Could they truly understand a people who fought not just for survival but for hope? Would the Talsiri see the human spirit for what it was? Or would their deep-seated beliefs blind them to the possibility of peace? The Sentinel's engines hummed softly as Adrian stood in the command room, staring at the galaxy outside. His fingers gently grazed the edge of the console, as though trying to hold on to something real, something tangible. A thought lingered in his mind. Something his crew, his people needed to understand. Peace would not come without sacrifice. That was the price Alina had spoken of. They couldn't pretend to be perfect. They couldn't expect the universe to bend to their will. Humanity had taken from the stars for too long. Now they would have to give something back. Mara entered the room, breaking his train of thought. Her expression was serious, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes. "Captain, the time has come. The Talsiri are waiting." Adrian nodded. This was it. The moment when everything they had worked for, everything they had fought for, would either be validated or lost forever. The shuttle was ready. The Talsiri flagship loomed ahead, its shape growing ever larger as they approached. The crew had done their part. Now it was his turn. He had to face the Queen again, to prove to her and to himself that humanity was more than just a race of survivors. They were a race of dreamers, of thinkers, of believers. And if he could not show that to Alina, then perhaps he would fail them all. As the shuttle docked, Adrian felt a deep breath catch in his chest. His hands shook, but he clenched them into fists, steadying himself. This was the hardest part, taking that first step toward Alina, knowing that whatever happened next could change everything. But no matter the outcome, he would never regret trying, not when there was a chance for something better. The door to the throne room opened, and Adrian stepped inside. Alina stood before him, taller than any human, her crystalline form glowing in the dim light. Her eyes met his, as cold and calculating as ever. But this time there was something else, a spark of curiosity, perhaps? Or was it simply the tension between them, the anticipation of the trial yet to come? "Captain Steele?" Alina's voice was as cold as ice, but with a layer of something else, something almost softer. "You have come. Tell me, have you succeeded? Have you earned the right to peace?" Adrian took a steadying breath. "We've come a long way," he said, his voice unwavering. "My crew is united. They've faced their fears and their divisions. We've worked together like never before. But unity is only part of the challenge. The real test of peace is sacrifice." Alina raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Sacrifice? What is it that you are willing to give up for peace, Captain Steele? What are your people willing to part with to achieve what you seek?" Adrian stood tall, his chest expanding as he spoke from the heart. "We are willing to give up our pride. We are willing to set aside our old grudges. We will let go of the fear that drives us to fight. And above all, we are willing to trust in one another, trust in you, and trust in the possibility that the universe doesn't have to be a battleground." Alina's expression remained unreadable, but for a fleeting moment there was a softness in her eyes that Adrian had never seen before. She moved closer, her steps measured and deliberate, and her gaze never left him. "Trust," she repeated, as if the word itself were something foreign to her. "Do you understand the weight of what you ask, Captain? Trust is not something easily given." "I do," Adrian said softly, "but I believe that it is the only thing that can bring us together. The trust to move beyond the war, beyond the destruction. The trust to build something new." For a moment there was silence, and Adrian could feel the weight of her gaze as she scrutinized him. There was no anger, no malice, just a deep, thoughtful silence. Finally, Alina spoke. "You ask for much, human," she said, her voice low but not unkind. "But I will give you the chance to prove your worth. Humanity has failed in the past, but I sense something different in you, something that makes me wonder if your people truly are capable of peace." Adrian's heart skipped a beat. He had not expected this. For a moment, hope blossomed in his chest, a fragile, delicate hope. "But there is one more thing you must understand," Alina continued, her voice hardening once more. "Peace comes at a cost. It is not a gift to be given lightly. It is a burden that must be carried by both sides. If you fail to understand this, Captain Steele, then your efforts will be in vain." Adrian nodded, the weight of her words settling on him. "I understand, and I'm ready to carry that burden." Alina stepped back, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Then the trial begins now. Humanity has one last chance. Prove to me that you are worthy. The weight of Alina's words hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Adrian's heart thudded in his chest as he faced the Talsiri Queen, her piercing amber eyes fixed on him with a quiet intensity. There was no more room for negotiation. No more words to be exchanged. Only action would determine humanity's fate now. "Prove to me that you are worthy," Alina repeated, her voice softer but still tinged with an edge of steel. "Show me that you understand the price of peace. Humanity has always fought, Captain Steele. Can you show me something different?" Adrian inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of her challenge press down on him. What could he possibly do to prove that humanity was capable of something so fragile, so precious as peace? How could he convince a being like Alina, who had commanded armies and destroyed entire civilizations, that the human race could be more than just a collection of fighters? The answer came to him with startling clarity: sacrifice. He had always been a fighter, always been the one to rally others to the cause, but this was different. Peace would require something far deeper than strength. It would require humility, understanding, and the willingness to give up what they thought they knew about themselves. "I understand the price, Queen Alina," Adrian said, his voice steady despite the rising tension inside him, "and I'm willing to pay it. Humanity is ready to change, but that change requires trust. It requires us to give up our fears, our divisions, and our pride. We must give up the things that have made us fight in the first place." Alina's gaze never wavered, her silence pressing down on him. But there was something in her eyes, a glimmer of something, almost like she was seeing him, seeing humanity for the first time. "What if your people cannot change, Captain Steele?" she asked, her voice tinged with something that felt like doubt. "What if they cannot set aside their old wounds, their pride, their anger? What if the cost of peace is too much for them to bear?" Adrian stepped forward, feeling the pressure of her gaze but not backing down. "Then we will fail, but that is the risk we must take. If we cannot change, then there is no hope for us. But if we succeed, if we truly set aside our past mistakes and trust in each other, then the cost will be worth it. Not just for humanity, but for everyone." The room was silent for what felt like an eternity. Alina's expression remained unreadable as she studied him, her sharp eyes calculating, assessing. Finally she spoke, her voice low but clear. "Your words carry weight, Captain Steele, and perhaps there is something to them. I will give you this final trial. Show me that humanity can truly be united, not just in words but in action. Do this and I will consider your request for peace." Adrian's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the final test. He had been given a chance, but he knew that it wasn't just about him. It was about every person on Earth, every person fighting for the chance to live without war, without fear. "I will not fail you," he said, his voice filled with unwavering resolve. "I will show you that humanity can be united, even when the cost is high." Alina nodded once, a small, almost imperceptible movement, before she stepped aside. "Then you have 1 hour. Go. Show me that you understand what it means to trust." Adrian turned and walked out of the throne room, his mind racing. 1 hour. He had only 1 hour to prove to the Talsiri Queen, to prove to the universe that humanity was worth saving. As he entered the shuttle and returned to the Sentinel, he gathered his crew. They had come so far, united in ways they hadn't been in years, but this final test, this trial of trust, would not be easy. It would require each of them to give something up, something deep within themselves. Adrian stood before them, his eyes scanning the faces of the crew who had fought beside him for so long. "We've been given a chance," he said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of their shared burden. "But it comes with a cost. We have to trust one another completely. We have to prove that humanity is more than just survivors. We are a people who can look beyond ourselves, beyond our differences, and come together for something greater. If we can do that, if we can show the Talsiri Queen that we are capable of peace, then we've won." There was a long silence. Then one by one the crew members nodded, their eyes filled with determination. They understood the stakes. They understood what they had to do. Mara stepped forward, her eyes steady. "We'll do it, Captain. We've already fought for so much. Now it's time to fight for something better." Adrian's heart swelled with pride. For the first time he felt the full weight of what they were doing, what they were trying to accomplish. This wasn't just about one person, one ship, or one battle. This was about a whole species, about proving that even in the darkest of times there was still a spark of hope. The crew moved quickly, setting their plans into motion. They gathered supplies, worked through strategies, and prepared to meet Alina's expectations. But more than anything, they prepared to give up the one thing that had always kept them apart: their fears. Adrian knew this was their last chance. It wasn't just a test of strength or will, it was a test of humanity itself. Would they rise to the occasion? Would they truly be capable of the sacrifice required for peace? The time was ticking down, and in 1 hour the fate of humanity would be decided. The hour passed like a heartbeat, each second laden with the weight of an entire species' fate. As Adrian stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, the vastness of space stretched out before him, silent, indifferent. But inside his mind raced. He had no more time. He had no more words. This was the moment. The crew had worked together as never before. Every person on board, from the engineers to the officers, had taken part in the most extraordinary effort he had ever seen. They had come together, not just to survive, but to understand something greater than themselves. Trust, sacrifice, the cost of peace. And now, standing at the precipice of humanity's greatest test, Adrian knew it was time. Time to face Alina one last time. He looked around at his crew. Every face was set with determination, a quiet fire that burned behind their eyes. They had each given something of themselves in the name of this greater cause. But was it enough? Could they truly prove that they were ready for peace? "Captain?" Mara's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "It's time." Adrian nodded, his voice low. "Let's go." As the shuttle approached the Talsiri flagship, the immense ship loomed before them like a dark, gleaming monolith. The sheer power of it, the years of destruction it had caused, seemed to pulse in the space between them. Adrian's heart was heavy, but he was resolute. This was not the end of the war, it was the beginning of something new, something better. The shuttle docked with the flagship and the doors opened, revealing the throne room where Alina awaited. This time there was no tension, no fear. Only the quiet anticipation of a final judgment. Adrian walked forward, the crew following him, their eyes full of resolve. Alina was already there, standing tall and regal, her form shimmering like a being made of light itself. Her eyes, those golden pools, were trained on them as they entered. She said nothing, only watching as they moved into the room. Adrian stepped forward, his steps firm but not hurried. His voice was steady as he spoke. "We've done what you asked. We've come together. We've trusted each other. We've set aside our differences, and we've made sacrifices." Alina regarded him silently, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her eyes, something that Adrian couldn't quite place, that made him believe they were close to something important. "We're ready to prove ourselves," he continued. "We've shown that we can work together as one, and if that's enough, if you believe in what we've done, then we will stand with you, not as enemies, but as allies. If you give us that chance." The room fell silent, and for the first time since their first encounter, Adrian felt the full weight of Alina's gaze, not as a queen of war, but as something more. As a ruler who might have seen humanity for what it truly was, flawed, imperfect, but capable of something greater. Then, slowly, Alina nodded. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. She stepped down from her throne, moving toward them with a grace that made the air around her shimmer. "You have done what I never thought possible," she said, her voice softer than it had been before. "You have shown me that your people are not just survivors. You are dreamers, builders. You have proved that peace, though fragile, is not out of reach." Adrian's heart soared. They had done it. Humanity had passed the test. They had proven themselves worthy. "And now," Alina continued, her voice steady once more, "I will give you what you have asked for. I will give you peace." A wave of relief washed over Adrian, his chest rising and falling as if he had been holding his breath for a lifetime. Peace. They had won. But then, Alina's expression changed. A faint smile curved the edges of her lips, and for the first time, Adrian saw the Queen in a new light. There was no malice, no cold calculation, only something human, something fragile. "I will also give you this," she said, her smile growing slightly. Trust is not something I easily grant. But you, Captain Steele, have earned it. Adrian felt the weight of her words settle deep within him. They weren't just words of victory. They were the beginning of something far greater. A new chapter for both humanity and the Talsiri. In that moment, as Alina's smile remained, Adrian realized something that made his heart swell with pride. It wasn't just peace that they had earned. It was the understanding that even in the vast, uncaring universe, there was still room for connection, for trust, for hope. As the crew stood together, united for the first time in a way that transcended the walls between them, Adrian felt the weight of humanity's resilience and vulnerability. They had proven that in the end, it was not the weapons or the strength of their armies that had won the war, but their ability to trust, to change, and to reach for something better. And in Alina's smile, he knew that victory had been secured, not through destruction, but through the power of what it meant to be human.